Happy Sunday, friends and lovers, and thank you for joining us. This is 5 Minutes with Robert Nasir, and I'm joined, as always, by the delightful Amy...
What are you doing there, Mrs. Bones? Again? You interloper? Get out of my seat. That's my husband. Get your hands off him.
Hi there. Happy Sunday, friends and lovers, and thank you for joining us. This is 5 Minutes with Robert Nasir. I'm joined, as always, by the delightful...
Real Amy Nasir.
Amy Nasir.
You know, you think I lost a little weight there.
And today is Sunday, October 20, 299th day of the year with just 67 days remaining. There are 61 days until...
Please like and share. And
like and share. All's Hallows Eve is this weekend, making this our last show before the costumed crumb crunchers come up to our front door to collect COVID. I mean, to collect candy to receive that carbohydrate insanity.
They're treats, not their tricks.
That's right. No tricks, just treats. And on this date, October 25th, in 1764,
Well,
it was the wedding of Abagail Smith and John Adams.
How very nice. That's
So
very
happy
romantic.
256th anniversary to the spirits of John and Abagail. John and Abagail Adams are, for as interesting and heroic as John Adams' political career was, they were a fascinating couple. It reminds me a little bit of Elizabeth Barrett Browning and the Brownings' marriage, in that they wrote to each other. They wrote letters to each other. But today was their wedding. On October, future President John Adams marries Abagail Smith. This devoted couple's prolific correspondence during their married life has provided entertainment and a glimpse of early American life for generations of history buffs. Future First Lady Abagail Adams was the daughter of a parson. She was home-taught and read everything from classics to contemporary law. When she met her future husband, Adams appreciated her intellect and outspokenness. There's a link to the biography and this information in the show notes. I won't read any further, but I have to read one of the very first letters from John Adams to Abagail Smith, October 1762. The letter starts out, and it's handwritten. It's actually, you can get these online. The link is in the show notes, so you can see his handwriting. Miss Adorable, by the same token that the bearer hereof sat up with you last night, I hereby order you to give him as many kisses and as many hours of your company after 9 o'clock as he shall please to demand, and charge them to my account. This order, or requisition, call it which you will, is in consideration of a similar order upon Aurelia for the like favor. And I presume I have good right to draw upon you for the kisses, as I have given at least 2 or 3 millions when one has been received. And of consequence, the account between us is immensely in favor of yours, John Adams, October 4th, 1762. These letters are available online and absolutely, totally, 100% worth a read.
So adorable.
Is that charming? Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
Gotta love that. Today is also World Pasta Day. That one's legitimate, so have pasta. Make yourself some lasagna. Spaghetti, macaroni and cheese, whatever you want to make out of pasta. You could extend that to egg noodles and anything, because pasta is just Italian for dough, so any noodle, I think, is legitimate on World Pasta Day.
Scary, bloody mastacholi with the
you could.
the mozzarella balls with like the eyeballs that you stick olives into it.
Yes, a little hot sauce or barbecue sauce blood there. Which is, I think, World Pasta Day is more legitimate than the other national holiday, when I went looking up for the best national holidays today, which is National Greasy Food Day.
Delicious.
Now, I have some paleo friends who will say, give me the greasy food over the pasta. I don't need those empty carbs. But with Halloween coming up, we got to make room for a few carbs. And finally, my favorite thing about October 25th, it's John Anderson's birthday.
I love that so very much.
Gotta love that.
For those who don't know, John Anderson is lead singer of Yes. It's a band, it's a prog rock band that lasted throughout the 80s, throughout the 90s, and is still around kind of in some forms. But John Anderson is the original
That's right.
kind of inspiration for the whole band.
Oh, he started the band.
Yeah.
He is the guy who wrote all their classic hits. Was also in the bands Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman and Howe, John and Vangelis, the John Luke Ponty band he toured with a couple of years ago. He is 76 years old today and still rocking out. So as I mentioned online earlier, obviously Pete Townsend and Ian Anderson, or The Who and Jethro Tull, were wrong when they said, too old to rock and roll. You are never, ever too old to rock and roll. So happy birthday, John Anderson.
Happy birthday, John Anderson.
So obviously we're talking about Halloween this week and related topics like mortality.
Yes.
And the value of Halloween. When we talked about weekends and holidays, and I gave a list of all the compelling reasons to celebrate each holiday, when it came to Halloween, and I'm going to do the same thing again, I always turn that right over to Amy.
Hey, it's
Halloween was
time.
never my holiday.
Yes.
But it is so Amy's holiday.
Well, first let me explain this. Behind us right now is a dream catcher that I made out of a hula hoop. It's a little bit, I actually worn it at Greenfield Village Halloween event.
It's slightly worse for wear. It got a good night out.
It got a good night out, yeah. And so yeah, it's my dream catcher, my Halloween nightmare dream catcher. Or you can dream about getting all the candy and dressing up as your favorite, hero or monster or other kind of creative thing like a dream catcher. I went with my coworker who actually dressed up as a somebody who woke up dead. so she
somebody who woke up dead.
Yeah. So
my costume is somebody who woke up dead.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
So she had a one of those sleeping eye. What do you call them?
Like a mask?
Yeah, eye mask.
Eye mask.
A sleeping mask.
Nowadays, you can't use the word the mask without people thinking of something else.
Right.
But yes, an eye mask.
So she had that above her eyes, and then she had her eyes all decked out, kind of in zombie-ish sort of way, and so it was really funny. And so I went around saying that, yeah, I'm the dream catcher who's collecting my dead friends' dreams. So, and it was fun. So, but I absolutely love Halloween, as you know, and I've got my page, which is very successful, and everybody posts on it. So much fun. It's the Halloween Spookiness and Goodie Exchange.
Yes.
And again, I just want to thank everybody who has sent me goodies in the mail, and I've loved sending goodies to you, to those who I did that for, and I look forward to next year, which I can go ahead and carry on that tradition, because I think it's a tradition in my life now.
Well, it's in my notes that if you are not already part of Amy's Halloween Spookiness group, and the link to that is in the show notes. It's a private group, so you got to ask to join, but she'll let you right in.
Yep.
Amy has readings in the group.
I do.
We'll talk a little more about that. But you can hear Amy's spooky and sometimes sexy romantic Halloween readings. Amorous.
Yes. Amorous.
Yes. It's a good word.
Yeah, and if you are, watching on YouTube right now and frustrated because you can't post or comment or something, go over to the 5 Minutes with Robert Nasir Facebook page, and I will see your questions there.
Yep, or post them in the chat on YouTube.
Yeah, post them in the chat here in Facebook if you like, or in YouTube. Yeah, so I'm trying to keep up with it. Yes, but when we're done with this, we're going to go ahead and upload this to Facebook, despite Mr. Zuckerberg's trying to throw us off here.
That's right.
So,
despite the constant negative press.
So I wanted to go over, I'm delighted to go over the history of Halloween.
History of Halloween. Why is Halloween a thing?
It's very interesting. It's basically the idea, and we went over this in a previous episode just a little bit, but I have some more notes here. As many of you already know, Halloween is it comes from the Gaelic for summer's end, or at least that's what we understand. A lot of this is kind of speculation. There are many theories out there with regarding, the origins of Halloween. But basically what happened was the Christians, the Catholic Church, made it into All Hallows Eve or All Hallows Evening, which was the evening before All Hallows Day or All Saints Day, Hallows being another word for saints. So you've got Celtic festivals. Celtic festivals, not the basketball team.
Yeah, those would be Celtic festivals.
Yeah, the Celtic festivals. The old Irish, maybe in Scotland, I don't know, wherever in the British Isles that they had pagan customs at the time.
So what were they
pre-Christianity.
doing?
The basic idea here is that they believed that the sun was being held prisoner for the winter months. Mm-hmm. And a little background, I'll come around to this, but it was released around May 1st, which was the beginning of summer for them. If you remember, May 1st is May Day, and that actually has some pagan origins to it. But they celebrated the harvest basically with bonfires. They would dress up and make loud noises to ward off, spirits of the dead, which included fairy spirits, which were kind of like translated to the ancient gods. And that's another idea in itself. But basically they made sacrifices of livestock and food to these supernatural beings to protect what they wanted to keep over the winter, to make sure that the animals, the livestock that they wanted to keep over the winter didn't die, and to make sure they didn't run out of food. So, what do you do when, you're living in, 300 BCE or something, or AD, and
winter comes.
And winter comes, and you're living in this kind of very sketchy agrarian way. What do you do? So, but they used this time, they thought that this was a time where the veil between reality and the supernatural world was the thinnest. So they thought that this was also a time to reach out to the spirits who could tell them what their future was. So they divined the future, and they told fortunes and such in many different ways. So before I go back or keep going with this timeline, because I'm going to cover what's happening in the British Isles and also then how that translates into America and this evolution of Halloween. So basically, you've got Halloween, All Hallows Eve, and you're not calling it Samhain. By the way, it's not Samhain. Those are pronounced with a W. But so why are we calling it this Christian variation? Back in 609 AD, Pope Boniface the Fourth declared that All Saints' Day was going to be on May 13th.
May 13th.
May 13th.
All Saints' Day, May 13th.
So Halloween was on May 12th. I don't know. Actually, Halloween was never on May 12th. The theory goes is that they wanted to, at the time, May Day, or what was called Beltane, which basically meant summer's beginning, or that's what it designated, I should say. It didn't mean summer's beginning. It was something about bonfires or something. I'm sorry. It's actually translated as the return to the sun, Beltane, or May Day, May 1st. During that time, they had all sorts of Halloween-like, bonfires and people dressing up, trying to ward off evil spirits. And they thought at that time, those people, the Celtics, believed that, again, the veil between our world and then the spirit world was very thin. So that was a very popular custom at the time, this Beltane or May Day or however you want to call it, in the beginning in the beginning of May. So the theory is that Pope Boniface the Fourth decided to kind of, he was the interloper. He wanted to make sure that Christianity had a foothold with the celebration of the martyrs or the saints during that time. Well, after a while, Beltane or May Day or however, during that time in May wasn't as much of a celebration. And that celebration kind of scooted on over into late October. So in 1837, Pope Gregory IV ordered the official observance of All Saints' Day every November 1st, and extended that celebration to the entirety of the church, of the Catholic Church. There's more to that, but one little interesting note is look up Walpurgis Night, Walpurgis. In Germany, they still celebrate this for May 1st. It's a longer story than this. It involves Saint Walpurgis, and that was a Christian reference, but at the same time, it's very Halloween-like, even today in Germany. With the bonfires and the noise making and dressing up and having parties throughout the night. So that's an aside. So then we have, in around 1000 AD or BCE, the church designated November 2nd as All Souls Day. The theory is that people wanted to still kind of commemorate the spirits of their dead loved ones. So the church listened, and then they, they gave people this All Souls Day.
November 2nd, All Souls Day.
Yes.
Okay.
And so if you're still following me, I hope you're still following me here. So again, this is November 1st and 2nd, and there's 2 days. It's the Day of the Dead. And now this is going into Mexico. And I just figured this out today, that that the celebration, or that this heritage of the Day of the Dead in Mexico spans back about 3,000 years. And the rituals honoring the dead in pre-Columbian Mesoamerica. The Aztecs and other people during that time, they celebrated their dead loved ones as they do today. So even though you've got All Souls Day that kind of coincides with the Day of the Dead and All Saints Day, it's very pagan. So that whole pagan notion still hasn't been drummed out, and so I find that very interesting. In this whole journey of Halloween. So going to the British Isles, so basically these customs, these pagan customs, carried over into the Middle Ages, and then it carried over into the 1800s. And those things are telling, as we know, actually, a lot of these we're familiar with, telling ghost stories, having harvest celebrations in barns, again, divining the future and fortune telling, but they did this by heating nuts on the fire, peeling apple skins, pulling stalks of cabbage, weird stuff, very strange agrarian things, walking backwards down basement stairs holding a mirror.
Walking backwards down the basement stairs holding a mirror.
Yes, holding a mirror in front of you so that you could see behind you as you're walking down the stairs backwards. And the idea was that the image of your future betrothed, your future husband, was going to pop up in that mirror somehow.
Works every time it's tried.
I suppose you're going to have, a young man down, in the basement hiding, waiting for the right person
you think
to come down.
The dice were loaded there.
Yes, I think so. So there's all sorts of interesting things going on in the 1800s and the early 1900s. And again, dressing up, the idea of dressing up as spirits or ghosts or monsters to kind of blend in and ward off, evil spirits. And a little fact in terms of dressing up for Halloween specifically. Mm-hmm. The first reference to that was in 1585 in Scotland. And this actually does connect to, I'll maybe do a show on this, how Halloween connects to Christmas time. How that whole dressing up and going door to door was very similar to what they called guising or mumming or souling during Christmas time. Look that up if you'd like. And then there is a 1790s reference to October 30th being Mischief Night. And
Mischief Night.
Mischief Night. And we'll get into that here now, because now we're going to America. We're coming to America. We have all of these folks from the British Isles, Ireland and Scotland and everything like that, and Germany, and all of these different kinds of things that are blending together all of these interesting customs for Halloween.
Well, you'll probably get to this, but Annie in Europe is asking, do Americans go to cemeteries on November 1st to give flowers or gifts to their ancestors buried there?
It's funny because they do not. They don't.
Well, tell us more what they do.
Well, let me just say, I know in France, or I've read recently that France, especially Paris, they're having more Halloween parties. They're actually purchasing things, they're dressing up.
This year, or just in general?
In general, somewhat recently, according to some articles, I may be wrong.
Okay.
According to some articles about Paris.
Right.
But in general, yes, you're right, Annie. You've got people going to your graves, just like in Mexico in the Day of the Dead. Mm-hmm. It's a little different, obviously, in Europe. No one's dressing up. I don't know if they do that in Spain or not, but...
And all we do here is try to recover from our candy hangover.
Yes. We try not to get diabetes.
Or real hangover, depending on what kind of Halloween party you're attending this Saturday.
True. But that's a wonderful question. Thank you. So in colonial America, there were, some indications that people had harvest festivals and that there was mischief making. And I'll get into that in just a second. Basically, you've got early 1900s celebrations in America. You probably saw those creepy black and white photos of children wearing these crazy papier-mâché masks that made them look really deranged. Well,
what's that all about?
That was part of it. They were just trying to make masks. At the time, there was no mass production of costumes, so if you were living on a farm and doing all those strange divination things and going around making mischief, I
guess if you were trying to look like a specter without a lot of materials, that's how it comes out.
Exactly. And but there were actually more adult parties at the time in the early 1900s. In America, you didn't have any trick-or-treating, actually. You had adult parties. Oftentimes you had people dressed up in those kind of Italianate opera clown costumes. They didn't look like clowns. They just had those weird cones on their heads and the big frills around their necks and the little pom-pom buttons going down. But more and more, what became popular at that time was kind of like a Valentine's Day-like parties, where you had sort of courting parties. Young men and women would get together, and they would have, the punch bowl and things like that. The Halloween party was
I wonder if
born.
I could get with the gal who was doing divination and slip her a little extra money to tell Amy that I was going to be her husband.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and bobbing of apples.
Bobbing of apples.
That's an interesting custom because that was part of divination. Oftentimes, I think what they basically did was they took an apple, they put an initial in there, like R for Robert, and if I were able to reach in and grab that apple from the big bowl, and it said R, then, that would tell me that I might actually be marrying Robert.
So if you bit into my apple, that was good luck for me.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. So that's one of those things that kind of harkens back to divination and fortune telling. So you had these parties, these harvest parties, and then it goes into this young men and women sort of Valentine's Day-like courting parties. And you had a need for costumes to go as, not as your superhero, not as your ghost, not as your demon or witch, but you would dress up with kind of icons of, so you'd wear like a top or a shirt with a bat on it, and like a kind of a conical hat, but it was more of that kind of opera clown hat. You'd have all these elaborate sort of costumes made of crepe paper, and which, by the way, were not good if you were caught on fire. That would not. So those were fairly short-lived, but they were really cool. And you'll find those sorts of things in what's called Denison's Bogey Books.
Denison's Bogey Books.
Yes, Bogey Books were started around the 1910s and into the 1930s, or more, I'm not entirely sure. But they were basically pamphlets for an adult party, or you could have party for young people, for planning that party, for what kind of foods to make, how to decorate your home, and how to make costumes out of crepe paper. And they're really, really fun. So if you want to look it up, it's Bogey Books, Bogie Books.
So I guess in 1900 you couldn't go on the internet and just search for Halloween party ideas.
No.
Okay.
Silly. Going back now to Mischief Night.
Mischief Night.
Yes, in the early to mid 1900s.
So in Michigan, they call that
Devil's Night.
Devil's Night.
It's October 30th. It's the day or the night before Halloween. And in other places, mainly in Pennsylvania and New Jersey and some other places on the East Coast, and I think Minnesota, I believe, they can call it Gate Night, Goosey Night, Moving Night, Cabbage Night, and Mat Night. I'm not sure what all this means, but
Yeah,
it sounds very interesting.
It would be completely arbitrary speculation.
Yeah, Cabbage Night would be, I know that there was an account from Scotland where a young man, basically a bunch of men stole cabbages, and then they threw these cabbages, hurled them against people's doors, and I'm sure ran away.
Good times. Well, it sounds like a party right there. I was never a Devil's Night guy. It was a teenage prank, toilet papering houses and throwing eggs and
putting soap on the windows with nasty things.
That just always seemed like a drag to me. I never got the fun.
No, I never did that either. But the whole idea of setting things on fire in front of your doorstep, ringing the bell, and then running, and then having somebody step in something horrible when they come out to try to get the fire out. But there were other more wholesome things, like in the rural areas, you would take a wagon and you would disassemble it and stick it up on top of a roof.
And reassemble it? Or just leave the parts up there?
You just leave the parts up there because it would be very funny.
It seems like it'd be more funny to reassemble it, and then everybody would wonder how it got up there.
I think that there were probably some accounts of that where they did reassemble it, but sometimes they would just make all sorts of odd structures. So going on, I want to read an account here of where you had a mischief night that went kind of wrong, and to compare it to today's problems politically.
Okay.
So get this, folks. So basically this Devil's Night or whatever, Mischief Night would turn into something very violent. In some places, children rioted on Halloween.
Children rioted.
Yes.
Lord of the Flies Halloween.
So here's an account from 1945. 1945, wholesomeness and, Leave It to Beaver. However, it's not necessarily that's how it was.
We didn't have any of today's problems back in 1945.
So near a place called Q Beach in Toronto, a group of high schoolers started bonfires on a main thoroughfare, fueling them with gasoline and bits of fencing. Mounted police arrived, because this is Canada, mounted police. Instead of turning and running, the students threw rocks at them and set up barricades to prevent fire trucks from entering the street and putting out the bonfires. When police finally arrested and booked 13 of the rioters, a mob of 7,000 young people, boys and girls, gathered and marched down to Central Booking to the police station to free them. These 13 rioters. It took tear gas and water cannons to disperse the crowd, and bail for the ringleaders of the Q Beach incident was set at $1,000, about $10,000 today, and then most of them spent several weeks in jail.
Yeah, I can't imagine who would pay bail for those troublemakers.
So, I mean, can you imagine 7,000 boys and girls, storming the police station? That could never happen again. And that couldn't have happened anyway in 1945, right?
No.
So what ultimately stopped this mischief going on around Halloween was giving kids candy. So that is when the wonderful trick-or-treat tradition came about. And
Sounds like blackmail.
It
Sounds
was
like giving in to the hoodlums.
don't give in to their blackmail. So,
Although, it brings to mind the similar Christmas tradition.
yeah,
Here we go wassailing, and
That's
we're
right.
not going to leave until we get some.
there's another excellent connection between Halloween and Christmas is
Yes.
wassailing. Young teenagers, they wouldn't leave your doorstep. They would demand entry into your home and eat all
Yes.
of your food if you don't give them some alcohol,
Figgy pudding.
some figgy pudding.
Yes.
And so, yeah, you're not necessarily thinking about your dead loved ones on Halloween. You can. That certainly adds some depth and meaning to it. But that is not the point of it. And it harkens back to an Ayn Rand quote, one of my favorite,
Yes.
which is the purpose of morality is to teach you not to suffer and die, but to enjoy yourself and live.
The purpose of morality.
Purpose of morality.
Ethics is about enjoying your life and living it.
Yes,
Well.
exactly. So it's Halloween in a way is a real
It takes me back to our episode on morality,
yes.
in which we pointed out that ethics is not a scarecrow with a stick to chase away your pleasures and your values.
That is right.
The purpose of morality is to teach you not to suffer and die, but to enjoy yourself and live.
Yes.
Well, Halloween would be a great time to get a unique perspective on that.
Yes. So do we have time for a poem, or I don't think we do.
We can take as much time as we want. I don't even know when we started.
About 7:20.
We've been going for 36 minutes,
Yeah.
which is a little longer than 5 minutes. Since you mentioned mortality
Yes.
in a philosophy Facebook group, somebody asked the question, how do you feel about your mortality and impending death? There were several good answers, but a surprising number of people were dismissive and even indignant. But my answer is it's a good question.
Yeah.
It's because mortality is simultaneously the best, the worst, and the most irrelevant thing about life. So I'm quite aware of mortality and the fact that every day you waste is one more that you've lost. And I mentioned in a previous podcast that I'm scheduled to become metaphysically challenged on Saturday, July 26th, 2036.
No.
I will become metaphysically challenged. Saturday, July 26, 2030, give or take. So given that I've got quite a bit left to do before then, it's best that I get busy with it.
Yes.
I occasionally draw graphs by hand to make this visually and kinesthetically, feel it in your bones real.
Yeah.
So this was my graph that I updated last year. And this is optimistic. This is assuming each box is a year, assuming that I live to be 80 years old. Even though that's well past my insurance company, what's the word I'm looking for? Actuarials would suggest. My dear and darling mother, who I think I got most of my genetics from,
Yeah.
is 80 years old and super healthy.
Right.
And if I can be half as healthy at her age, then I will outlast that. But a chart like this, and the listeners, I'm holding up an 8x10 graph where I've got X's for every year I've lived. I can look at the ones left and the empty ones and say, oh my gosh, those are finite.
Yes.
Mortality is a thing, and I need to make sure I fill them up.
What do the colors mean?
What do the colors mean? I actually had a explanation for that. The first 6 years are preschool. The next 9 years are the challenging school years when I was still kind of figuring things out.
Yep.
And that's followed by 6 orange years. And those are the years of adventure and discovery and a lot of romance.
Nice.
I'll leave it at that. The 10 years after that are the fast food years, and putting a career together. The 16 years in green after that are the IT years. No, actually, it goes back a little further than that, because I had 25 years in IT. And that's when, why would it be 16 years 2 years ago? That might have been the married years. The married years were the best years.
Yes.
And
Yes. I think so.
I'll have to find the graph where I explain my own chart, because I'm having trouble differentiating. In any event, it's good to realize that you're
Finite.
you know, as Ayn Rand said in Atlas Shrugged, your days are numbered. Okay. She didn't say that. She had one of her characters say that.
Yes.
That's the last thing that she would have said in and of itself. But your days are numbered. You know, your life is finite.
Yep.
You've got this magnificent life, but you've only got so many years, weeks, days, hours, moments. And since we only have so many moments left, I think you should read us a quick Halloween poem. Now, it's
okay.
not that quick because it's long, but Amy has actually selected her favorite 4 out of 7 verses
Yes. So,
to the poem All Souls by Edith Wharton.
from 1909.
1909. What were they
Yes.
writing in 1909?
So she writes, okay, a thin moon faints in the sky overhead, and dumb in the churchyard lie the dead. Walk we not sweet by garden ways, where the late rose hangs and the phlox delays, but forth of the gate and down the road, past the church and the yews, to their dim abode. For it's turn of the year and All Souls' Night, when the dead can hear and the dead have sight. And where should a man bring his sweet to woo, but here, where such hundreds were lovers too? Where lie the dead lips that thirst to kiss, the empty hands that their fellows miss. Where the maid and her lover, from sere to green, sleep bed by bed, with the worm between.
Ooh.
For it's turn of the year and All Souls' Night, when the dead can hear and the dead have sight. And now they rise and walk in the cold. Let us warm their blood and give youth to the old. Let them see us and hear us and say, ah, thus in the prime of the year it went with us. Till their lips drawn closed, and so long unkissed, forget they are mist that mingles with mist.
Yes.
For the year's on the turn, and it's All Souls' Night, when the dead can burn and the dead can smite. And where should the living feel alive, but here in this wan white humming hive, as the moon wastes down and the dawn turns cold, and one by one they creep back to the fold? And where should a man hold his mate and say, one more, ere we go their way?
For the year's on the turn,
and it's
All Souls' Night, when the living can learn by the churchyard light.
So if you have a loved one, if you've got a lover that you really, really love and want to have nice kisses with.
Take her to the graveyard?
Yes.
A cemetery date.
A cemetery date.
Sounds like a killer idea.
Yes. Good stuff from the Halloween reader, a Halloween reader here.
So thank you for sticking with us. We've had a few technical challenges during the show, but we couldn't resist getting into Halloween a bit. Your homework for the week, because I always assign homework. Your homework for the week is to take our previous lessons about purpose and decision and apply them to the holiday. With Halloween, that's easier than, say, with a presidential election. What's my purpose in voting in a presidential election? What am I hoping to accomplish with my one vote? But no, with holidays, much easier, especially with Halloween. So here's what you do. Decide what your purpose is in Halloween. Remember, I said you should always know your purpose, whether it's doing an important project at work or just relaxing and enjoying your evening or making a phone call to your parents or your children. Know what your purpose is consciously, and then you will have a more satisfying experience no matter how light and trivial. So, my purpose for Halloween, here's my list. If you have a list like this, you'll make sure that you have a good Halloween and you don't think after the holiday, Yeah, I wish I'd done things a little different. My purpose in Halloween is to have fun. It's also to treat the neighborhood kids. It's also to treat the wife to the kind of Halloween experiences that Amy enjoys. And it's also to think about fear and death and fate and humor and romance, as we discussed mortality, for example. And here's your Halloween decisions I want you to make. Decide what you're going to do for Halloween, and decide your attitude or disposition with regard to Halloween. I know people who are coming into the holiday and they're uncertain what's going to work this year.
Yes.
There are people who are devising mechanical devices to give away candy safely. There are people worried about going to restaurants for celebrations and whether they'll have to wear masks or whether that's enough. And here's what I want for you. I want you to decide, again, what you're going to do and what your disposition is going to be. Decide in advance so you're not second guessing, so you're not making phone calls, arriving at the restaurant, changing your mind. Let all of that go. Once you've decided, this is what you're going to do. And if it's a mistake, this is the mistake I'm committed to making. Decide. That's your homework in regard to Halloween, and heck, in regard to everything. But in regard to Halloween, decide your purpose and make your decisions in advance.
And have a lot of fun.
Yes. Well, speaking of fun, my Post-it note for the week. Yep, seemed to have
It's
dropped
right
my
here?
pad. Nope.
Nope.
But here's a copy of it right here. Never, ever, I'm holding it up for the camera, never, ever underestimate the importance of having fun. You might remember that from Randy Pausch's last lecture. The great Randy Pausch,
Yes.
who gave one of the greatest lectures knowing that his time was short.
Yes.
It's a good time to revisit that. If you've never seen, or if you haven't listened in a long time, to Randy Pausch's last lecture, give that a listen. But that's the Post-it note that's going on my mirror this week. Do we have any last-minute questions before we wish everybody a happy Halloween? I think we're pretty good here.
Yeah, we are good. And
Excellent. Well, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for sitting through our technical difficulties.
Yes.
This was great fun. And I'm going to miss it next Sunday when we get together again. And Halloween is over and dead.
Over and gone. Well, actually, at that point, it's going to be the All Hallows Day.
All Hallows Day. Well, maybe we'll do something because after Halloween usually is Thanksgiving.
Yes.
And we start decorating with fall and colors and leaves and all the fall stuff. But we have one more horror before that, which is we have to get through the presidential election.
Oh, I completely forgot about that one.
So if this Halloween hasn't been frightening enough for you, if you're looking for one last scare, it is coming. And maybe we'll mention that next Sunday, but maybe not, because we don't do politics here. If you want to get into politics, go to my Facebook wall. It's been kind of political lately.
Yes.
And interesting. So again, thank you so much for joining us. If you have any questions or comments, suggestions for future shows, go to the 5 Minutes with Facebook, 5 Minutes with Facebook, 5 Minutes with Robert Nasir Facebook group,
Yes.
and let us know what you think, what you'd like more of, what you'd like less of, and all of that. If you want to help spread the word about this fantastic show, despite this episode being what it was, but it was fun to hear Amy talk about Halloween.
Well, thank you for listening, everybody.
Go to youtube.com/Robert Nasir, the only platform at which this show's actually working this week, and like and share our shows from there. We're trying to get our YouTube numbers up.
Yes.
Other than this week, our Facebook numbers have been great, but we're working on youtube.com.
Yes.
If you'd like to support the show financially, and we do have a new sponsor this week, thank you so much, Paul, for joining us.
Thank you. Yes.
You can go to patreon.com/Robert Nasir and support the show, or send me a message, and I will give you a PayPal address if you prefer that. And finally, with that said, and as always, we do wish you, all of you, you specifically, and everyone out there,
Yes.
we wish you happiness. We wish you success. We wish you spooky, charming, silly, insightful, and fun times.
Amorous.
Amorous. Definitely amorous, because as always, we wish you love.